I'm Tim Monroe, and this is what I really want to talk about. There's something fascinating about every single one of us. Everybody has a passion and a story to tell, something that lights them up. Every week I sit down with interesting people and we talk about the things that really matter to them and to all of us. It might be funny, it might be weighty, it might be weird. It's what I really want to talk about. I'm talking today with Tom Martin. Tom is a professional radio journalist with more than half a century of experience on local, national, and international levels. Tom currently serves as editor, producer, and host of the public radio current affairs program Eastern Standard on WEKU in Richmond, Kentucky. Tom grew up in Moorhead, Kentucky, and attended Moorhead State University. He served as a news reporter or news director at stations in Moorhead, Asheville, Roanoke, Spartanburg, and Pittsburgh. He was on staff for the launch of the AP Radio Network in Washington, D.C., the launch of the RKO Radio News Network in New York, and served as a news writer and anchor for ABC Radio Network News and Paul Harvey News in New York. I'd love to talk about Paul Harvey if we have a couple of minutes. While in Washington with the AP, Tom won the Peabody Award for Best Radio Documentary, The Garden Plot, documenting the impacts of U.S. food aid in developing countries. And since returning home here to Kentucky in 1995, Tom has been host of the world's first rhythm and news show on WVLK, founding program director of WRVG in Georgetown, communications director for the House Majority Leadership in the Capitol in Frankfurt, founding editor-in-chief of Business Lexington, and co-publisher of the online arts publication undermainarts.org. He's also, on top of that, a very accomplished professional musician. Welcome, Tom. What do you really want to talk about today?
Gosh, there's so many things going on right now that are worthy of deep discussion. But I think, our shared interest definitely is in radio. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely a passion between the two of us. And second to that would be, for me, would be music. They kind of compete sometimes.
Yeah. And I think maybe overlap in your history too.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. You sent me just sort of going back and forth about what we're going to talk about today. You sent me some very interesting pieces of your history. But what maybe intrigued me the most was you talked about the first time you heard R&B by Black artists on the radio.
Yeah.
Tell me about that and why was it so formative for you?
Well, it was, I grew up in Moorhead. Moorhead was 99.9% white.
Yeah.
And we had really very little experience with anybody else of any ethnicity or race. And I guess I was about 14 years old, 13 or 14, and we had, our little transistor radios. And my friends and I used to gather. We had a lot next to our house, kind of grassy lot that we'd go hang out in. And we were laying out there under the stars one night, just dialing the radio, and landed on WLAC in Gallatin, which is outside of Nashville, mm-hmm. and heard something that we'd really not heard before. And it was just mind blowing. It was the blues. It was, mm-hmm. I think, Lightnin' Hopkins, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then this jock comes on, a guy named John Richborg was his name. And he was just talking about things that it was just all new to us. It was quite a discovery.
So how old were you at this point?
About 13 or 14.
So young teen. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would have been the early 60s. Mm-hmm. And so I was galvanized by this and listened faithfully every night. And in that time, when I graduated, I guess I was about a senior in high school in Moorhead. It was about the same time, 65 or so, after the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Acts mm-hmm. had been enacted. And African-American students were beginning to show up on campus. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember exactly how we made the connection, but it was learned that we had this band going on and that we wanted to expand it into a rhythm and blues and soul band. And so long story short, several of those students joined our band, and we morphed it into something called the Students of Soul.
Okay.
and it was kind of this big R&B juggernaut with at one point six horns.
Wow.
Uh, I was playing a Hammond B3 back then, which is
Yeah.
why I've got a bad back now, because those things are monsters.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just been a part of my musical psychology ever since, and it's passed on to my sons who are of like mind and also are musicians, and it's the kind of music we tend to gravitate toward.
Yeah. So it was this probably very big station coming out of the Nashville area, right? So
Yeah,
get to Moorhead.
yeah, it was a clear channel, 50,000 watts.
Yeah. And you could hear it probably really well at night, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And so that sort of was the genesis. I mean, I'm sure you were playing music before that,
Hmm.
but somehow this sort of pushed it all in this different direction.
Yeah, we were trying hard to, emulate the Stones and the Beatles and the
Mhm.
Kinks and et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
But I guess this was something that was kind of innate
Yeah.
because I really had not had experience with the blues or R&B and soul until I heard it, and it was just so moving.
Yeah.
Uh, also artists like Ray Charles and Etta James and you name it, it just
Yeah.
mind blowing,
Yeah.
and had a real impact.
So you discover this through the radio, and it sort of moves your musical journey as well. Um, and then you go into radio as your occupation.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like what was your the beginnings of your radio career?
Well, I had been majoring in pre-veterinary medicine at Moorhead, and
Okay.
was interested, but I worked for a vet here in Lexington for a summer, right after I graduated from high school, uh, and thought I was going to be interested. And I kept going back and working for him time to time, and finally realized that he never had a moment of his own,
Yeah.
and that it's a really tough line of employment and work
Mhm.
profession. And about that time, uh, I got a workship at Moorhead that provided my tuition if I took a position, and they offered me one at the college campus radio station. I really enjoyed what I was doing and got into it. So I switched to a major in communications, broadcast communications. They had not really fully matured their program yet. So about 2 years into it, my counselor said, you clearly are into this, and if you really want to expand what you know about it and your experience and perfect your chops, just go into it. It's one of those professions that
Yeah.
it's applied. You have to do
You
it.
learn by doing. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I did. I got a job at the local station WMOR in Moorhead, and was still at WMKY at Moorhead State University. And along, I guess about 9, 10 months later, an opening came at WISE Wise Radio in Asheville.
Okay.
That was before Asheville was Asheville.
Right.
It was a very sleepy place.
Hmm.
I was there for a time. It's where I first really got into news, just as a news assistant, and went from Asheville to Roanoke, from Roanoke to Spartanburg. Um, I had to leave Spartanburg while I was there. At the time, it also was a very quiet place, kind of off the radar.
Hmm.
I was assigned to go cover a Klan rally.
Mm.
This is after South Carolina's legislature had just passed legislation to try to contain the Klan that forbade gatherings of more than public gatherings of more than 3 people from covering their faces,
Okay.
which really discouraged the Klan.
Yeah.
So there came word of this rally, which was to protest plans for a rock festival outside of Spartanburg. And I was sent out there to cover it. And I drove out, and I was working for Word Radio, WORD, and we had a big Ford Galaxy news car
Okay.
with, in red letters, huge red letters down the side, WORD News. So it was unmistakable who had arrived at the Klan rally.
Right.
And while I was there, I was taking notes and watching, and pretty blown away by what I was seeing. But indeed, these people had pushed back their face coverings, and I began to recognize a few.
Mm.
And being very young and naive, I hustled back to the station and reported that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I had a 6-month-old at home, and we began getting some very nasty phone calls.
Right.
Because back then you listed your full name in the phone book.
In the phone book, yeah.
And so, long story short, 2 weeks later, I was off to Pittsburgh and KQV, where I had my first experience with a guy at that time who called himself Jeff Christie on the air, and he was a nighttime jock. It was a top 40 station. And he was fired one day while I was there because he kept talking politics on his show. And remember, this was in the mid-'70s, and that was just not cool, especially on an ABC-owned top 40 radio station. It was music and news. So he was fired for doing that. And the general manager said, you may have a future in sales or something, but stay out of radio. I didn't see this individual again until 25 years later. And I was on my first day on the job at WABC in New York. And I'm there typing away, and this guy comes walking in with a suit on, and he spins around and he says, "Tom, is that you?" I'm like, "Yep, my name's Tom." He says, "Well, don't you know who I am?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know who you are." And he's, No. You knew me as Jeff Christie, but his real name was Rush Limbaugh.
No way.
And they had rented a studio off of the WABC newsroom. And his show, of course, was on the air during my afternoon drive shift. Okay. So I was 20 feet away from Limbaugh for 5 years.
Oh, my gosh.
And watched how they functioned and how they ran that show. And it was something else.
Yeah, I bet. So, that's interesting because you're in these relatively, like you described them as like sleepy towns for a while. And then at some point you make the leap to New York. How did that happen?
Well, I had been at Associated Press, or AP Radio, in Washington for about 10 years.
Okay.
And RKO in New York, which already had one radio network, was expanding to a second radio network, and they were staffing up and they're building new studios, and there was a lot of excitement around it. And they did the same thing that Ted Turner did to AP Radio. They raided the shop for talent.
Yeah.
CNN got a lot of its first crew from AP Radio.
Okay.
One of them was a gentleman by the name of John Hollivan, who was on CNN for many, many years.
Yeah.
And just a great story there that I can go into later.
Yeah.
But several of us were contacted by RKO in New York. They flew us up there to do interviews, and I had been at AP Radio for 10 years. It was beginning to feel a little stagnant.
Yeah.
We were doing just the same thing over and over and over every day, although we were covering just these unbelievable stories at the times. Nothing like now, but certainly in those times, significant. And I liked it. I had sworn growing up in Moorhead that I would never live in that New York City.
Yeah.
Never. I'll never ride on public transit. Well, I did both and enjoyed both.
Of course. Yeah.
Lived in the city in New York for the first couple of years that I was there, and then moved out to Summit, New Jersey. More room for kids and just more easier living.
Yeah.
Although it did mean a significant commute. But that's how I got to New York.
So in those days, Tom, were you a host? Were you reporting on the news? What was your role?
I was a news anchor.
Okay.
RKO News did top of the hour newscasts.
Yep.
And I did those usually the morning drive shift, sometimes afternoon drive.
Okay. Yeah. Which, most radio stations, at least the news stations, still do that. NPR still does it. They have a
Yep.
host of anchors, and some of them become very well known. So tell us. Well, you also worked with or for Paul Harvey, and I we're going to age ourselves a little bit here, Tom, but I remember Paul Harvey when I was a kid. I grew up in Chicago, and he was on the radio. I think he was on. It's syndicated all over the country.
Hmm.
But I believe he might have been on WGN in Chicago, but I'm not sure about that. But I just
Uh,
remember hearing him. So tell us about Paul Harvey.
okay. I think he started at GM, but I think he ended up at WLS.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because he had become friends with the news director at WLS, Bob Benson,
Hmm.
uh, who went on to the ABC owned station in San Francisco. And in 1974, when I was at KQV in Pittsburgh, which again was an ABC owned station, so we were all kind of networked,
Hmm.
Bob was hired by the Associated Press to start a radio network in Washington. And so once again, well, actually, this was prior to RKO, but he was searching for staff. And so he contacted me because we'd done things together between our two stations and invited me to come down and do an interview. And I did. And the first night that I was in DC, arrived there to go to work, was the night of Nixon's resignation.
Oh man.
And you could cut the air with a knife. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just electric. And for the first month that before AP Radio went on the air, they were still building the studios on K Street. So we met every day. We took over the Sidewalk Cafe nearby. And it was really great because we got a lot done, but also a lot of great people watching as well,
Hmm.
because you never know who you're going to see in DC.
Right.
Um, and so, anyway, that's Benson then went on to become vice president for news at ABC in New York, ABC Radio Network News. And one day I had done the morning drive shift, and this was after RKO folded. We were given the option, Dick Clark bought the network, and we were given the option of either taking a buyout, a severance package, or moving with them to Crystal City, Virginia, outside of DC, which was is a right to work state. And we were union.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to stick with the American Federation of Television Radio Artists. They've been good to me and still are,
Hmm.
and take my chances in New York. And everybody else felt the same way. So
Yeah.
we all kind of basically took a month or so off and waited to see what percolated. And we got a call at one day in August of that year from Dick Goldstein, ABC News. Do you have time to come in for a meeting tomorrow? I'm like, well, yeah. And I was actually under my deck, doing some work under my deck, and raised up and bumped my head when
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
So the next day, we all showed up at the ABC studios on 11th and 67th in New York, unbeknownst to each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of us were standing there in the elevator vestibule saying,
What are you doing here?
why are you here?
Yeah.
Are you here for a job interview? And so we all went up to the designated conference room. They closed the door and they said, we have you here because we have intel that there's going to be an incursion from Kuwait into Iraq.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Back in those days, the networks operated their own little intelligence units.
Hmm.
And so somebody at ABC remembered what had happened at RKO and that everybody had pretty much stayed there. And by everybody, I mean news writers, editors, tape editors, reporters, and whatnot. We're all just there. So it was like, boom, instant network.
Yeah.
And they moved us in and created a network to cover specifically the Gulf War.
Right.
So Benson was there. After that ended, after about 2 years, I stayed on and was doing mostly the morning drive shift. And one day after I finished, which was about 10 in the morning, I was getting wrapped up and getting ready to leave to go home because you come in at 4 in the morning. Uh, and Benson comes walking down the hallway and he says, "Are you going home?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can you stick around for a little bit?" I said, "Sure. What's up?" He said, "Well, Paul has called in sick and we need somebody to jump in there." And by that he meant Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey, yeah.
And I'm like, seriously? I've only got, it's a 15-minute show
Yeah.
with no break
Right.
and no sound.
Yeah.
So
Just him
everything
talking.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like shoveling, trying to fill up the Grand Canyon with a garden trowel because he liked those little short stories.
Yes. Yes.
And so they hooked me up with his editor in Chicago and with the editor in New York, and we banged out a show really like furiously. And comes time to go on at noon, and I go down to this hall, this special studio that they maintain in New York for whatever Paul was there, with redundancies, 2 of everything, 2 mics, 2 recorders, 2 of everything.
Yeah.
Because he was carrying the network.
Yeah.
And so I had the stack of papers. This was pre-computer. And I have this stack of copy and I'm getting it all set. And I'm nervous as all get out. And the studio is really cold and there are these glaring fluorescent lights. It was really uncomfortable and nervous on top of that. And at the last minute, the clock's ticking down, 30 seconds to go, 20 seconds to go. The door opens and Bob Benson steps in. He says, "Hey, Tom, what? How's it feel to talk to 22 million people?"
Oh, no.
I got a lump in my throat like I have right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Remembering that. Yeah. And I chased that through for 15 minutes, trying not to let it interrupt me.
Yeah.
But I wound up being his vacation sub for the following 5 years, even after coming back here to Kentucky for a while. When I was at
and those of you who might be listening to this podcast who don't know about Paul Harvey, he was a broadcasting legend. He had the syndicated, like you were saying, 15-minute show, and he had a very, very distinctive style, verbal style, but he had catchphrases, and so trying to substitute for him must have been extremely difficult.
It was, and what I had to figure out was, am I supposed to emulate him?
Right. Yeah.
Or just be myself?
Yeah.
And so that first one, which I would hate to listen to again, I think it was a little combination of the two, and I quickly decided, that there's no other. He's so unique. He was so unique.
Did you say at the end? Did you say, "I'm Tom Martin. Good day"?
Like, good day.
Good day. Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I don't know how you can avoid that. I mean, it was his.
No, it was. Yeah. It was kind of tongue in cheek, but hopefully most listeners got that. But I did do that.
Yeah, and I mean that's a time when, and we can talk more about this, when radio really was, pretty dominant. I mean, it was such an influential, and Paul Harvey, I don't know where he was, but he's all over the country. I know that, and you could hear him kind of almost anywhere. And whenever he popped up, it was just such a very distinctive program, which is kind of news, kind of storytelling, a little bit of his own personality coming out, and
very human interest.
Yes,
you love little human interest stories, especially stories of heroism, of kindness. It wasn't deep intellectual content. It was more Americana. And it was not what we're familiar with today as talk radio or commentary. It was more folky, I guess.
Yeah, folky, and also just his style, the way he talked, and this little catchphrases, and which you don't really hear much anymore.
Right.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he was certainly a legend. So, okay, so there you are in New York, and you're sort of at the ground zero of a lot of things. I mean, you were talking about the Gulf War, right? And I think, in terms of today, when you think about the 24-hour news cycle that exists today, I think it really started with the Gulf War. That's
Mhm.
when CNN just went nuts, right? And they were everywhere.
Yeah,
And you could tune in at any time. And Arthur Kent was on the roof of some hotel in Tehran or wherever, Baghdad, I guess it would have been. And
yeah.
yeah, and that was really the beginning of that whole 24-hour news cycle that we're used to now, but it wasn't like that back then.
No, it was something else. I think Nightline, Ted Koppel had a lot to do with it too.
Yes, the Iran
But you mentioned
crisis.
CNN and Baghdad, and that
Yeah.
that was there was a trio there in the Baghdad uh, Intercontinental Hotel. John Holloman, who I mentioned
Yep.
before,
Yeah.
and John was a country boy from Georgia, and
Hmm.
he carried that persona right into his. He never changed. He was very
Hmm.
genuine, and so while Bernard Shaw and forgetting the third person, but they were hiding under beds
Yeah.
as these cruise missiles were coming in, hitting Baghdad.
Yeah.
John, on the other hand, is leaning out the window, calling it like a fireworks display. And his
Yeah.
producer saying, "John, get back in here."
Right.
He wouldn't do it. He just was a believer. And one quick little factoid that I think is interesting about John is that he had two goals. He wanted to be the first in space, first journalist in space,
Hmm.
and he wanted to co-anchor something with Walter Cronkite,
Oh, wow.
who was our mutual hero.
Yeah.
And he was about to do both. Ted Turner had arranged for him to go up on a Soyuz,
Hmm.
and I'm not really sure about the comfort or safety of a
Yeah. I'm
Soyuz, but
not sure I do that.
John was willing to go.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, he had arranged for John to co-anchor with Walter Cronkite John Glenn's Return to Space.
Hmm.
Both of those were coming up, and John had a young son. He was living in Atlanta at the time, and it was on a Saturday morning. He ran out to get some cereal for his son, and he was T-boned, broadsided, and killed.
Oh, man.
And it was
I didn't know that
we were in
story.
each other's weddings. We were really good
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
and
That's awful.
it was quite a shock.
Yeah. That's terrible. So, yeah. So there you are in New York, covering the news and right in the middle of all this. And now you're back here in Kentucky. You're back home,
Mhm.
and you're host and editor and producer of the Eastern Standard, which is an excellent show.
Thank
Tell
you.
us, did you found Eastern Standard? Were you the?
No,
No.
John Hingsbergen
Okay.
preceded me, and in 2018, John passed away suddenly. Had a heart attack and passed away. And then station manager Roger Duvall called me up immediately after he had heard about that because in his view, Eastern Standard was the station's signature show. It's
Yeah.
everything kind of hung around it.
Hmm.
And he said, "Would you please consider picking this up?" And at the time, I was really resistant because it seemed a little daunting.
Yeah.
Uh, it was a call-in show at that time. They were taking
Mhm.
calls, and there was no call screener.
Yeah.
And I'd worked there again at WABC for 5 years, which was all talk.
Hmm.
And so I watched how that works, the mechanics of it.
Hmm.
And you have to have a bank of call screeners because
Yeah.
people, are calling in to try to hijack your show or
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
say all kinds of crazy stuff.
Or they're just boring. You don't want them on the air. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have to be vetted before they're allowed to go on the air.
Mhm.
And we didn't have that. And we didn't have a delay.
Oh, wow.
And so I did a few of those, and it was just, I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Right.
And so I sat down with Roger and said, "Look, I really just don't want to do this. It's just too stressful. However, if you would consider, I think I can find support to produce Eastern Standard as a produced show in a studio in Lexington,
Yeah.
and where we have control over the content."
Hmm.
And to their great credit, they let me run with that. And Alltech stepped up and supported us. Then after their contract ended, the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky supported us,
Mhm.
and now the university
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
ours.
So, what's the mission of Eastern Standard? How would you sort of describe its mission?
Well, it's to satiate curiosity
Mhm.
from 10,000 feet up.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I've always enjoyed in life is pursuing curiosity, which I think is something that you have to be interested in doing in this business.
That's why I
So,
do this podcast, Tom. I'm
yeah,
endlessly curious. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And learning about people, which is
Hmm.
what you're doing here,
Hmm.
because everybody has a story, and it's usually fascinating, even if they don't think it is. It
Right.
usually is.
Yeah, it is.
So I came home because of a combination of the Happy Chandler maxim, never met a Kentuckian who wasn't on their way home, and my firm belief that there somewhere in Frankfurt is hidden a button that somebody pushes at some point and Kentuckians come home.
Yeah.
Because we do. We do that. There are lots of returnees here in Lexington and around. And, I really enjoyed living and working in Washington, D.C. and in New York City. But New York in particular is also extremely stressful.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that until you get away from it, step
Yeah.
away from it. And I came home for a high school reunion and kind of noticed that everybody seemed not quite as stressed out as I was,
Yeah.
and calm and happy with their lives. And I just, I don't know what it is, folks, about our state, but there's some secret sauce out there. And the other thing about it is that I mentioned curiosity in the beginning.
Hmm.
This state is so doggone interesting.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I love combating stereotypes, which I dealt with all the time in New York.
Sure.
Um, I like providing a platform for that so that we can demonstrate, that we know a thing or two.
Yeah.
Um, the arts, especially here in Lexington, are on fire right now.
Hmm.
And I think there are going to be some expansive developments in that area in the near future. But I wanted to be able to provide a platform for the arts. And I also wanted to highlight the fact that we have a huge academic community here.
Hmm.
When you think about it, I did a count once. I think there are at least 10 institutions of higher learning within an hour of Lexington.
Yeah.
And of course, 3 of them are right here, University of Kentucky, Transy, and BCTCS.
Hmm.
And BCTC.
Yeah.
Moorhead's just down the road, Center, and of course EKU is a stone's throw, and Berea also a stone's throw.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of expertise to draw on about anything you can think of.
Yeah.
And it really propels a show like Eastern Standard.
Yeah. And so what's your process? Well, let me ask you another question. Do you have a staff or you kind of do this on your own?
Do it on my own.
Yeah. Okay. That must be hard.
It is hard.
You got to crank out a show every week, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I do a set of usually five interviews every Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
So each one of them requires research.
Yeah.
Typically, I at least talk to that interview guest on the phone a couple of days ahead of time just to become acquainted, because I want it to be more like a conversation, not an interview, not a formal interview.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's more listenable if everybody is comfortable.
Yeah.
But if I can, I actually meet them for coffee and meet them face to face, and we get to know each other a little bit. And then I also do a lot of research to understand whatever it is we're going to be talking about. And we do the interviews, and there's an initial pass over the interview by Neil Kesterson, our sound designer and technical director. He sends them over to me, and I fine tune the edits because everything has to fit time wise.
Right.
And that process goes on every week, and then it has to be written. That means pulling excerpts for the promos that you hear on the air, uh, and for the billboard that precedes it at the top of the hour, just before the news, and write up a description, find imagery for that, post it on our website, post whatever was on our website to our archive. It just goes on and on and on. But after 7 years of doing this now, and the only time that we've taken any time off has been Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
It's become manageable.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
And it's a real high quality show. I think for, a locally produced, public radio program, you guys do a real good job. And has there ever been talk of trying to, turn it into some, larger audience, a national program or anything like that?
Yeah. First thing I would say is enormous kudos to Neil Kesterson for making it sound the way it does.
Yeah.
Neil operates a studio here in Lexington that's kind of the go-to for if NPR wants to interview somebody from UK, they have them go to Neil's studio.
Okay.
Steve Zahn, the actor, does a lot of work out of there. And Neil himself is just an excellent sound designer. And he's also a great editor. When I'm actually in there doing the script and whatnot, he'll catch things and suggest changes. I'm sorry, now I've forgotten.
Sort of thinking about it as a national program, not just
yeah. Thought about statewide, but it's a case of better watch what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much all I can do right now to contain it to, we have a big focus on Eastern Kentucky, obviously.
Right.
It's where our signal is. We're based at Eastern Kentucky University. And in particular, with the flood of 2022, it really thrust us into the culture of Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah.
And it's where I'm from, where many of our staffers are from at EKU. And it's near and dear to my heart and needs all of the positive attention and uplifting. And, it's a warts and all situation. There's some very serious issues that also need to be aired and addressed.
Yeah.
So the thought of going statewide is appealing on one level, but, the devil's in the details, and I'm kind of resistant.
Especially if you're the only one putting it together. I mean, that would be even more daunting than it already is. So I'd love to sneak in a little bit here about your musical journey, because I know you're also a very accomplished musician. And we sort of talked in the beginning how radio kind of pushed that in a certain direction. So what's your musical sort of experience right now?
Right now, I'm in a band called The Full Catastrophe.
Okay.
Which is titled after a line in Zorba the Greek, where he's on this ship and he's just sitting there and some other passengers shooting the bull with him. And the other guy says, "So what's your life like? Are you married, Zorba?" And he says, "Yeah, got the wife, got the kids, got a car, got a mortgage, got a job, the full catastrophe."
The full catastrophe.
And our songs tend to be about the full catastrophe spectrum. So it's a really interesting group with Melissa Rosen and Mark Deffenbaugh, who were in Greenwich Village for quite a while as singer-songwriters, and then gravitated to Nashville, and eventually wound up in Lexington to be close to a grandchild. And so they do a lot of the songwriting. I do some of it. And then Jesse Pena is our bass player, and Jesse's a renowned guitarist and guitar instructor here in Lexington, and was in one of my previous bands, the Patrick McNeese Band, as a lead guitarist. And we're right now just kind of rehearsing, and we've not played out yet. We're kind of working toward that.
Yeah, and you're a keyboardist basically, right? A piano player. Yeah. I listened to a little bit of it. It was there was one piece that I listened that you did was really nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, really good. So, is that part of your future, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I grew up in a household where I took piano lessons beginning at 5.
Mm-hmm.
My father played by ear every day,
Wow.
and he was a fabulous player. He was a stride player, which is, just all over the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And even when my band would rehearse in the basement, when you're in rehearsal, you tend to play something and stop,
Yeah.
make a correction.
Yeah.
I'd hear Dad upstairs
He's playing the same
playing
thing.
along,
Playing along
with us. Yeah.
That's great.
So there was a ton of encouragement in our household, and they hosted band rehearsals there.
Yeah.
And along the way, got to know the African American members of our band
Mm-hmm.
and changed. I watched that happen.
Yeah.
Because they had not had that experience either before.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in the Disciples of Christ Church, Christian church. I'm not a churchgoer anymore, but I was then. And one of the things I've taken away from that experience for a lifetime is that it was fundamental. It was in a not in a religious sense, but we believed in do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, what else is there?
Right.
And so applying that value and that philosophy to the circumstance, my parents just didn't blink. They immediately were very warm and welcoming, and made these young people feel at home. We began to discover that they had ambitions like ours, and needs and tragedies, and that, what I'm saying is we're all humans.
Yeah.
We're all connected.
Yeah.
And so it was a really wonderful experience. And so to answer your question, this is something that is never going to go away.
Yeah.
Going to be playing until I can't anymore.
Such an important part of your life.
Yeah.
So to try to wrap some of this up a little bit here, I want to talk sort of at finally, and sort of in conclusion, kind of about radio generally.
Okay.
You talked about when you were very young, hearing this radio station out of Nashville and how that was a big deal to you. And at the risk of sounding like sort of two old men being nostalgic, I had the same experience where I'd be upstairs in my bedroom with a little transistor radio, listening to WGN in Chicago or WLS, and listening to Cubs games on the radio. Or listening, there was this guy named Milt Rosenberg who used to do the show in Chicago, which was a very sort of academic. He could talk about any subject at any time, and I just found it really interesting. And so radio had a huge influence on my life, and obviously on yours too. So how do you feel about the sort of state of radio today? I mean, is it still there? Is it struggling? I mean, I know the internet has kind of taken over. But radio's different. So how do you feel about all that?
Well, I think on the positive side of it, one of the attributes of radio that it has going for it is that you can turn your back on it and consume it. And you can take it with you anywhere. You can do that with a podcast. But the difference is that radio can be live.
Yeah.
I say can be because it used to be all live.
All live, yeah.
And the idea of syndicated programming was just, what's that?
Right.
It's overwhelmed us now. And with the Telecommunications Act of 96, I believe.
Yeah.
Which opened the floodgates to station ownership. We went from a limit of 7. That was the limit that you could own, to whatever.
Yeah.
And so Clear Channel Radio was born overnight with 1,800 plus radio stations.
Yeah. Right.
And that decimated local newsrooms. It was all centralized. So you might be listening to a station in Lexington, but the weather is being done in, say, Dayton or somewhere.
Yeah, it's similar with local newspapers, where
it sure is.
These huge conglomerates have bought up all the local newspapers, and most of what you see is off the AP wire or not local, and
Right.
staffs have been decimated. And it's really sad. And this issue of being live, I think, is really key.
It is. It's
You
really
know,
important.
it really is. And I can remember growing up, and you kind of got to know the hosts, whether it was a DJ or a news person or a host of a talk radio station. You kind of got to know them. Now most of the music stations are automated, and there's nobody sort of curating the music for you or talking to you about the music. There's only a couple stations I can think of anymore. I mean, there's probably more that I just don't know about, but that do that and that are doing it well. And to me, that was the sort of real attraction, is somebody played a record and then might say something about it. Maybe it was new, and maybe then they tell you when they're coming to town. That group, that
Right.
sort of thing. And you just don't hear that anymore, and I think that's really a shame.
That was baked into our philosophy at WRVG, which was a phenomenon. That radio station came and went in a few short years, but it was mind-blowing what happened out of Georgetown College with that station.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we've got here, but that's quite a story if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was at WVOK. They had decided to sell the station. So all of us were looking for work.
Where was
I had
this?
only come back here.
VLK was where?
In Lexington.
Lexington, okay.
And a professor at Georgetown College heard this on the radio and called me and said, "Hey, you don't know me, but I've been listening to you, and I've got an opportunity to do something pretty incredible here with radio. Would you be interested in hearing about it?" I said, "Sure." So the appointed day for me to go out to Georgetown College came. I didn't know what I was going to see when I got out there, and so I went to the building and found the office, opened the door, expecting a professorial type, and there's this guy sitting behind a desk with a gigantic dead poster behind him on the wall and hair out to like here. And he said, after introductions and whatnot, he said, "Take a look at this," and he hands me this envelope. And they had wanted to expand their signal. At the time, it was 140 watts. As you know, that's about enough for the signal to drip off the side of the building and catch it with your radio. Yeah. They wanted to expand to about 3,000 watts so they could carry sports to Scott County. Mm-hmm. So they applied to the FCC to boost their signal. The reply was, "Well, you have to do an engineering study to see who else is on your frequency." Yeah. And they were 89.9 on the dial. So they hired an engineering firm to survey the area to see who else was on that frequency, and that would determine the size of our signal. Mm-hmm. Well, it turned out that there wasn't anybody in the immediate area. So the response came back, and this letter stated, "You are hereby authorized to expand from 140 watts to 50,000 watts."
Wow.
So Georgetown College they were just on fire with the possibility. They hired me and a couple of other people. They gave us a house that they owned over by the stadium on Lemons Mill Road, gave us a budget to renovate it into a radio station, which was fun all by itself.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So we created a performance studio in the middle of it so that we could have live music on the air. We coincidentally, Christian Science Monitor Radio was going dark. We got in touch with their Washington bureau and said, "Hey, we know you guys are about to be out of a job. What if we just took over your bureau and made it our Washington bureau, and you cover the White House and Capitol Hill for us?" And they were like, "Okay, you're where?"
Yeah, where are you?
So we were given this incredible budget to do all this, and so we hired these folks. And if anybody listens now to Marketplace and you hear Nancy Marshall Ginzer, she was Nancy Marshall at the time, and she was one of our top of the hour newscasters from DC. And our engineer actually went to Washington and rented a satellite uplink from the public radio satellite system, brought it back to Georgetown on a boat trailer. We parked it out in front of the station, figured out the coordinates, and presto, we were on the public radio satellite system. And again, another long story short, by the time it was all said and done, we were feeding a top of the hour national and international newscast to over 200 stations across the country.
Wow.
And I'll never forget one time I was up in New York, driving into New York from Teterboro, flown into Teterboro, and was dialing across to our New York affiliate, which was WNYE.
Mm-hmm.
And we had hired Sam Litzinger from NBC in New York, from WNBC. He wanted to bail out of New York. He'd never been to Kentucky before, was intrigued by the idea. So we hired him, and he did our morning show. And so I'm driving into New York City, listening to Sam Litzinger on WNYE, knowing that he's coming from this little ranch house on Lemons Mill Road outside of Georgetown, Kentucky.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The thing about live that I wanted to remember to say, and why that's so critical, just think about, for example, what can happen on I-75.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going on. Well, it's essential that somebody does know what's going on and let you know.
Mm-hmm.
During the terrible weather of the summer of 2022, the word has to be gotten out that people, this thing is serious. You have to head for higher ground. You have to get out of there.
Yeah.
That isn't going to happen on a station that's automated,
right,
or run from afar.
Yeah. I mean, it's really critical, I think. And I don't know if anybody's bringing it back. The station that I can think of that I still love is WXRT in Chicago, which is a music station.
Mm-hmm.
But they still have DJs on shift like every 4 hours. They're very knowledgeable about music. They talk in between the songs. They tell you their opinion about things. They have personalities. It's the only station I know that still does that. I'm sure there are others.
And do they stream?
They do. Yeah.
Okay,
WXRT.
I got to hear that.
Yeah, WXRT. They've been around forever. But they're the one of the few that I know of that still operates in that way.
And we had a rule at WRVG that everybody was on the air. We did sets of usually 3-4 songs max.
Mm-hmm.
And the rule was when you came out of that set, you had to do exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Read the liner notes, tell people who it was, who was in that studio band.
Yeah.
Because it might be somebody, really interesting.
Right.
If there is interesting instrumentation, what were they playing? What was that sound?
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, now I think it's, all done by algorithm or whatever. You got to play these songs at this time. And that's it. But I really sort of, I'm always worried about people are gonna, you're just being a grumpy old man, and you're like, I was so much better back in the day.
My son, one of my sons has a radio show on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and he just loves it. He's in a touring band, and he's been in this band for over 20 years.
Right.
But he does the same thing. He makes sure you know who you've listened to, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So this has been a great conversation, Tom. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been good to get to know you a little bit. I'm hoping our paths will cross again and we can have more conversation. Yeah. But I really appreciate you talking about, you have this fascinating radio history, and I knew that this would be a good conversation. And the more I do, this is my 18th episode.
Wow.
18th. So I just started, but it's been great because I learned something new every single time. And like you were saying before, everybody has a story to tell, whether they think it's interesting or not. And it's really great to put people on who can talk about the stuff they're really passionate about. So thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate it. You're a terrific interviewer. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think you're doing a great service. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
You bet.
What I really want to talk about is produced and recorded in the studios of Berea College News and Radio in Berea, Kentucky. You can learn more about this podcast and listen to all of the previous episodes at whatireallywantotalkabout.com. My contact information is on the website, so please get in touch with me if there is something that you really want to talk about. I'm Tim Monroe. Thanks for listening.